Hello, welcome everybody to the next session to Marispace-X. My name is Steffen Knodt, representing the German Association for Marine Technology, and as a partner of Marispace-X, we are very proud to host this session. Please welcome with me here on stage Karina Wirtz, CEO of the Offshore Wind Foundation, Jann Wendt, CEO of North.io, and Frithjof Hennemann, CIO of TruOcean. I'm very happy to host this session in the setup that we would like to have a discussion between us on the panel and then open up floors also to questions from your side. So starting with you, Jann, as one of has been the initiators of the Marispace-X project, what drove you to that one and what is your ambition for this project?
Thanks, Steffen, for the introduction. So we saw already in the video that Marispace is aiming to build some kind of a large-scale data space, so the maritime data ecosystem. What drove us actually while we were filing this proposal was that we saw there are many issues on the very basic level regarding data exchange, sovereign data transfer, and we had the chance to file a proposal at the Gaia-X project funding. So the Gaia-X project funding, it's a funding coming from the Federal Ministry of Economy. So, and we figured out a quite nice consortium with many associated partners who filed a proposal, 15 million euros, so it's a very substantial project that we are conducting here in the context of Gaia-X to bring a new level of digitalization and data spaces into the maritime domain.
Very promising, and as you mentioned, that Gaia-X is one of the big projects in Europe about the data spaces. Frithjof, as you are dealing with the data as such in the oceans, what's your role in that project?
Yeah, our ambition was, as TruOcean, we are building a maritime data platform, exactly to give a platform to all these data which is collected from subsea. And as Jann put it already, we see the race to the ocean. There's a lot of applications happening there. I think offshore wind is just one to mention, but there's many others. And we still have to gain more knowledge and information over the ocean. And therefore we need digital connectivity. And for good and safe digital connectivity, we need a framework how to exchange data in future. And I think Gaia-X is the framework, and I would say a big European achievement as a framework which has now to be put in action and into products.
That directs me to Mrs. Wirtz. And we have seen that the offshore wind is quite an important use case in that project, and we are very happy that that you're a partner of this. What is your role and what is your perspective here on digitization in the kind of offshore wind and the industry as such?
The offshore wind industry is certainly one that produces a lot of data. We will put a lot of structures in the seabed. We have a lot of opportunities here, actually, for sensorics to install instruments to generate data that we currently don't have. And on the other side, offshore wind energy is the market that needs data most in terms of its development. We need to know the seabed conditions, not only for where the foundations will be installed of offshore wind turbines, but also for the whole bunch of cable laying. We need to know where we have issues with UXO, so unexploded ordnance. We need to know about shipwrecks, about cable crossings already existing, pipelines, and so on and so forth. So this is, yes, where we come from and where our interest stems from.
And exactly as you said, that the offshore wind, there's so many industries and corporates are working in that domain, that of course sharing data and working together is quite an important factor for this. So handing over to Jann, what contribution here can we expect from the Gaia-X platform and what we provide there with the maritime data space?
Yeah, I think it's really the first time that there is some kind of a big idea of a data ecosystem in the maritime domain. Today it's still the idea of silos, so everyone has data, it's quite put into silos, it's my data, a very big thought that's driving at the moment still also industry, but data gets its value when it's shared, when it's shared, when it's used, when it's put into context. And this is what especially Marispace and also the Gaia-X, this European idea, is driving forward, sharing data under sovereign conditions. So all the time we want to know who's still the original owner of the data, what can you do with the data, build a data ecosystem, also a data economy in this context, but under the European values, under sovereign, under trusted environmental conditions. And that's what we just heard already. There are huge amounts of data produced just in the offshore wind industry. And to bring all these guys who are really all the stakeholders on one table on the data side, this is something that Marispace will definitely accelerate. And I think there's still lots of digitalization opportunities, especially also with these very ambitious goals that the offshore wind industry and the politicians have for the offshore wind industry.
Very interesting. And Frithjof, you're here from a startup perspective in the TruOcean, the data space. But we have quite a large number of partners in the consortia for Marispace-X. How do you expect working together and who's on board of this consortia?
Yeah, Steffen, you see, as software developers, we always have a problem. We don't starve from idea, we drown. So we do need industry partners who inform us about their use cases and what they actually really need. We are not there as a startup to build a platform and applications for an offshore wind industry by thinking of what might be useful for them. It's the other way around. We have to invite industry partners, and this kind of project helps to just sit down in workshops, iterate on ideas. First of all, to describe and determine what is the data value stream today, and where could digital tools and digitalization help to lift potential, lift efficiency potential, to just narrow down these massive process times. Because I think Ms. Wirtz can elaborate on this a little bit more. We have quite some ambitious exploration goals, not only in Germany, in the whole Europe, in regards to renewables. And it's a shortage and a bottleneck certainly on the hardware side, but my claim is also on the data processing side, so the digital part of it. We could make big giant leaps forward to accelerate the whole process, which we probably have to meet these ambitious goals, which is already by 2030 to, I think, 10 times getting the capacity out there what we have today. That is ambitious. But I'm quite happy when I look into, for example, a whole B6. I see a lot of already companies who are dealing with network, who are dealing with satellite coverage, so bringing data from offshore. So we would be very much like to solve the problem on the onshore side, where to host data and get it safely and securely processed.
Mrs. Wirtz, been mentioned that, of course, the targets for offshore wind in the next upcoming years are very, very ambitious, and we are all looking forward how we can achieve that and so forth. So how could you foresee that projects like this or collaboration with other partners of the industry could help you to achieve those targets with your members in your association?
It needs to be considered that for the time being we have not even 8 gigawatts installed in German waters in terms of offshore wind energy. Our German governmental targets foresee the installation of 70 gigawatts by 2045, and worldwide we are expecting projects worth at least 650 gigawatts. So this will all take place in the next 30 years, or even less. What that means for the time being is we have a lot of single entities, a lot of single actors that are processing data and need to have access to certain data, and the offshore wind farms will exist from start of development of a project. It takes 10 years until it gets started with installation activities. Then 25 years for operation. Over the course of all these years, there are various changing entities working with the same data, and that needs powerful, massive tools if we do not want to stick with sort of disks and USB sticks to hand over from one person to the next.
Very good. But as you already mentioned, if you have the duration of such a project and then partners involved in one project that coming in and going out, Jann, how could you manage that within the Marispace-X project then? What's your concept for being a partner of such a lifetime of an offshore wind park?
Yeah, I mean, the lifetime of an offshore wind park creates tremendous amount of data. Today, still very practical, you're sending very often hard drives around. And I mean, we're living in 2022, so I think it's not time to send hard drives around anymore. We see that the bandwidth is growing. Frithjof just also said this. There are many projects like OneWeb, SpaceX, Amazon. So we are getting bandwidth out there that will allow us also to transmit data. But this data has to be dealt with in an ecosystem approach, not this silo idea, and I put my data on the AWS cloud and I put my data on the Google cloud and you can't access it, there's no exchange. And this is what the framework of Gaia-X wants to achieve, setting standards, setting some kind of technical and legal framework for sovereign data exchange, so that even if I'm working on an IONOS cloud, I can simply exchange data with an AWS cloud, which is today really an issue. And we see that the wind offshore business is a worldwide business. Yeah? So you have stakeholders from all over the place. Sometimes you have legal restrictions that you can't use specific cloud technologies in one country, for example, but still you want to exchange data. And Marispace is aiming to build this generalized technical ecosystem, so a solution that you can plug in at AWS, at IONOS, at Google, and they can simply talk. They speak the same language. Mm-hmm. They can exchange data. They can make contracts, so smart contracting for exchanging data sets. And I think that's a giant step forward if we get into some kind of an idea like a data ecosystem, seeing data not as individual parts, but bringing it to some kind of ecosystem approach.
So if you're talking about an ecosystem or a platform, who's part of that ecosystem at the moment in the project, or to whom you are looking for that might joining the project?
Yeah, we're talking about surveyors, for example. Yeah, they are the first ones who are going out there, maybe even before the desktop study. So the desktop study also needs data access, and that's also an interesting part. Maybe there is already data existing, but no one knows about it. So what would be if you first search your ecosystem for data, yeah, and then go out to get more data, specific data? So the desktop, the planning side, it's the surveyor side, but it's also the engineers who are working with the data. The operators of the wind farm who are actually maintaining their wind park, who will also acquire more and more data over time, because you want to know in what condition are my turbines. Do I have to act somewhere? So if you put it under one name, this topic of predictive maintenance underwater, which state are my cables? And I think even then we go to kind of entities like insurance companies, banks. So I think it's a quite wide variety, and at the moment there is almost no exchange at all.
Frithjof, if we talk about the consortia we have at the moment, we also have the Hamburg Port Authority, for example, in the project, or the BSH. So how do you deal with all the agencies around and the other topics? Are they part of the project actively, or are they just contributing with services in the project?
You see, Steffen, every attendance to this subject is already contribution. So I understand that there are public departments who can have a less active part, but they are in this project's hearing and giving in also insights into the workshops. It's exactly what Jann is phrasing here. It's an ecosystem. And as he just put it, it's not just the active stakeholders within a wind farm project, it's beyond. It's the exchange to authorities like hydrographic offices, to like even environmental departments, to NGOs, to banks, to insurances. All these people needs to be integrated, and we really invite from all these ecosystems, players and stakeholders, to associate with this project and to work with us in the next 2.5 years on workshops, bringing in their ideas and their data needs, and that we better understand how in the end we will set up such an ecosystem. You must not forget that very often there's still some kind of hesitation towards web technologies and cloud systems, because we have done it the old way, sending around hard drives, and that was safe, more or less. I don't know. If I hand over my hard drive with my crucial data I have acquired for several millions, I hand it over to some random courier driver, I don't know where this ends up. So we have to flatten these obstacles and these sometimes hesitations to these new technologies. And Gaia-X is actually a framework which can very well help to build trust. I think trust is a very, very important thing when we want to innovate, that people understand that they can have a safe and secure workspace for themselves, and using such wonderful thing like a single source or a single space where I have my data and then connect to others. That will be the full effect of an ecosystem. But like building an ecosystem, like building a house, like building a state, we also need a framework, that everybody can agree to, and I think that is a good step. But as you put it, yes, from all these different areas within this maritime ecosystem, we would be very happy to have more associated interested players from industry and other domains.
Very good to hear. Mrs. Wirtz, with the Offshore Wind Foundation, also with the German Association for Marine Technologies, we are already associated partners. So what could you foresee for your association, maybe where your companies or what the industry as such can contribute or take out of that project in the broader perspective?
Well, first of all, we are not a company, we are a public foundation, so if you want an NGO, we've been founded 2005 by the German Ministry of the Environment, and we have in our Board of Trustees the whole value chain of offshore wind energy in Germany, plus all the authorities that are relevant for it on federal level and on single state level. So what we can certainly contribute is we have a huge address book, and we know what impacts and what matters for offshore wind farm developers, for operators, and also for, say, the service industry that will supply the operators with dedicated surveys, for example.
Very good. Maybe before we open up for the audience for questions, what's your wish for partners, Jann, in the project Marispace-X? What you're looking for?
I mean, there are different kind of opportunities there. The surveyor side for sure is an interesting one, because they are the main data acquisition units. What I would also be interested on is the insurance side. I think that's something at the moment we don't have reflected in our consortium. So this would be my wish, to dive a bit more in there. In general, we are fully open for industry, more or less from all kind of domains who can contribute. And I think that's also just important to know. It's not a research project. So we are really an industry-driven development project. So it's not after 3 years we will have some kind of a prototype and then by chance it will get some product. No, after 3 years we want to have the full ecosystem running. And we now, for example, next to IONOS, the one-on-one telecommunication company, Microsoft just joined actually the consortium. So you can see there's also a big power in the ocean industry, which also the big brands like Microsoft and Google are seeing. So I think the time of this data economy in the blue maritime domain is just about to start. So it's a perfect time actually to join.
Very good, and that gives me the opportunity to open the questions to the floor and the audience. Are there any questions from you here on the side to our panelists?
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Thomas Rauschenbach from Fraunhofer IOSB. Thank you very much for this interesting discussion and this very important project, I think. So I look on the project from the perspective of a developer of underwater robotic sensor systems. So we develop technologies that will deliver data later on, I think so. And I think these use cases you will discuss in the project are very valuable for us. So because then we also get an imagine what kind of data are needed in the future, what technologies we have to develop. How do you plan to involve developers of such technologies like sensors in the project so that we very early can take part in the deliver technologies for the data are needed later on? That's my question. Yeah. Thank you.
We need industry experience like the sensor producers, and we already have some kind of associations. We have also already a member from the sensor domain, and we are conducting now workshops, because for us we know the problems from a data side, at least our company, but we need to know what Frithjof already said. We need to get to know the problems also from the sensor side regarding digitalization. So the goal is to get this industry knowledge in as early as possible. So what we're doing, we're collecting problems. To tell us the problems that are happening or that are present in the today's world, and we will see if we can solve them. So in September we have the first physical workshop now in Kiel, so around 20th to 22nd of September, and there we will conduct some workshops in these different kinds of use cases. You mentioned already is offshore wind is the biggest industrial use case we have, but we have more than that. So it's Internet of Underwater Things, a very, very sensor-driven topic. The topic of munition in our oceans, which is also a very complex one, where we also need lots of technology to solve it in the end. And also the blue carbon case, I think we will talk a bit about it later. But we need industry. Industry needs to tell us the problems, and we will try to commonly work on these problems.
Okay. And any more questions from? Okay. If not, then of course I would like to do go.
Maybe if I might add to what Jann just said, me as a softie, I'm always interested in data users. So also from the sensor developer side, we are taking care of how to organize data, how to process this. But I would like to learn from the sensor manufacturer side, what is the sensor capable as output? Yeah, and from that side we also can go the whole value stream backwards. What would be required in future, and this is then again what industry representatives have to tell us. What do you need? In the end, it's about all the information what they need, what we have to provide, all the way down from the data acquisition to the processing, having some knowledge piece, and that we are happy to learn, of course. Yeah.
Very good. And I would like to pick up to the blue carbon use case, because we have talked about offshore wind and of course everything what we can do here, but actually we have more than one use case. We have Internet of Underwater Things, we have dumped munition in the sea, and biological solutions for CO2 reduction. So how could you foresee synergies between those use cases that are also getting in other domains?
Yeah, I think the blue carbon use case is a very, very interesting from different kind of perspectives. Using the ocean as a carbon sink, I think it's a huge potential, something that we need to quantify, something that we can quantify with data. More specific in this carbon sink use case here in the ocean, we conduct aerial surveys, so drone-based surveys, we are conducting airplane-based surveys, satellite-based surveys, combining this with hydrographic data. So this kind of idea of data fusion. But I also especially see big opportunities in combining topics like the blue carbon case and the offshore wind case. Seeing the offshore wind park as an ecosystem, not just an industrial ecosystem, but also a blue ecosystem regarding nature conservation, carbon sequestration. Yeah, I think there's so much more possible. That the first concepts now, I think, appearing, something that we can definitely support from the data side when we get a better understanding. But I think the offshore wind park has so much more capacity than just producing simple energy, if I can state it like that.
Totally agree. The can't agree more, actually. So I would see actually the largest benefit in the synergies, because at the moment in Germany, in German waters at least, we have very exclusive utilization of the area. So if an area is kept for offshore wind, it's offshore wind and nothing else. That means no multi-use cases, no collaboration, for example, no coexistence with, say, military interest or with fisheries. So fisheries is the most obvious example, and probably also where, at least in Germany, the most pressure is on, because with more and more offshore wind being built in the waters, the fishermen in Germany lose their territories to be able to do fishing. At the same time, the offshore wind farms develop, coincidentally, they develop biomass, because there's a lot of artificial reef building on the foundations. So as soon as you put the steel structures in the water, they start being muscled. So there are a lot of mussels around, and then the whole food chain follows successively. So we know there's a lot of fish out there, but we couldn't even quantify it. So there is, if you want to, that is a problem, tell you, which needs a solution, which is actually really crying out for a solution, because at the moment we're not able to quantify which species exactly benefit from offshore wind energy, and the way we use the area in German waters. And this is a very interesting case. But also looking at the military, with the structures being built in the waters, actually we have the possibility to build eyes and ears for military purposes out there. Just at the moment, quite an interesting topic. Yeah?
Very interesting, and Frithjof, as you mentioned that you're taking all the data into that one. If I just take the comment that offshore wind farms have artificial reefs and everything around, what reminds me a lot in all marine protected areas and nature-based solutions you put out there, could there be synergies also for your data platform, what you gain on knowledge here to be transferred in other areas?
Absolutely. Steffen, I think there is no any industry application you build to the ocean or elsewhere not considering some ecological impact or footprint, carbon footprint for the future. So I think to get a better picture on how big your footprint will be and what you're doing there, how you actually will affect into an ecosystem, you will then again need data to analyze and see and elaborate on the effect. And that will just be paving the way and inviting more or less these dual use cases. Once I already collect to see and embrace, for example, researchers to see if I have like foundation asset monitoring, why not already look on how algae, how mussels, or maybe hummers, other flora fauna is growing there, and then transfer this into maybe active use cases again. Yeah? So incorporating that, I would claim that this maritime ecosystem Jann was talking about, like Marispace could be. Offshore wind is maybe the most apparent currently, but it's so wide then again in the variety of use cases that you could implement, especially also with the focus on blue carbon. Yeah. So I'm pretty positive that this data foundation will be also the foundation for these future and more sustainable use in business cases as well.
Yeah.
And it's also the case that we don't need to use data just for one single purpose. Yeah, that's what we are doing now. So we are sending a ship out, costs 100,000 euros per day, and we just determine one or just asking one question to the data. But this data can answer you 20, 25, 50 questions, no idea. Yeah? But we just ask it one question. Then it gets into the silo and is never used again. So I have no idea how much research data was actually acquired already by all these institutes going over the Baltic Sea. I mean, probably the Baltic Sea was mapped already in a very high resolution by all institutes 1, 2, 5 times. I have no idea. So that's also from an economic perspective, giving access to existing data, making data available. So there's also a macroeconomic effect on this one. You don't have to survey everything every time again and again and again. Yeah. So I think there's something where we can really also save resources, save money on this kind of side.
Okay. If you look into the future, is the use case in the project, is it fixed for the upcoming 3 years, or is it open for others, or do you start projects on top? How do you see your next activities on the timeline?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting question, because when you discuss this with people, you can figure out more and more use cases. So we have now for sure these 4 main use cases, but we are already thinking about additional use cases. Maritime domain surveillance is a very interesting use case as well. The ports are also a very interesting data ecosystem which can contribute. So it's something for sure that has to be discussed, because we don't want to lose our focus, and I think we have already 4 very large-scale use cases. But on the other side, we don't want to limit a data ecosystem to a use case. Yeah, so the data ecosystem should produce use case after use case after use case, and it should be relevant for all industries. So there are different kinds of discussions already ongoing, and we are, I think, just collecting more ideas about it.
Okay. In respect of time, and to have also the possibilities for people from the audience maybe to get in a personal talk, what would be your closing remarks to the projects and what your wishes you will have for the upcoming period?
Yeah, my closing remarks, I think we have with Marispace a large chance to really have the first time a data ecosystem. I think the maritime domain is a perfect example for this. It's a very heterogeneous domain. It offers huge potentials, also huge business potentials, bringing also our transformation, our energy transformation forward. And I really hope that in 2 years, and maybe even in 1 year, we already have a running prototype, and we can showcase how a maritime data ecosystem can actually contribute to the transformation of our world as well.
Well, I'm sure that when we look back in 2045 on what we've installed and the way how we did things in development of offshore wind farms, I'm sure we will think about that period at the moment like the time where the wheel wasn't round, but it was rectangular. So this is actually what we need to do over the next coming years to make it much, much more efficient. And that's certainly an important element for that.
Okay.
My closing remarks would be, I'm really looking forward and to see and hope that this mutual effort will relate into some trust into new technologies, into new innovative approaches, really building in connected data ecosystem, maritime ecosystem. I would like to frame it in a picture that the whole ocean is already connected through the world. And that is the space we are concerning to look at and to collect information. So that should be connected likewise. Because again, offshore wind, if I have to put it, we have to focus in Europe, but we start projects all over the world. And Europe does have a head start in this technology and a lot of knowledge and experts. So these experts will be contributed all over the globe, and this needs, again, connectivity and exchange. And the time is now for these innovative new steps to mature and to really be a product market fit, something that can work and will be accepted. And then again also gives the opportunity for an industry to create something like standards, something that will bring us into really data value processes. And that will be amazing to see.
I see from your remarks that we will have exciting times ahead, and I believe that at the next SMM in 2 years we will have another update again on the project. So thanks a lot for your being with us on stage and for your time. And yeah, if you have any questions here from the audience to our speakers, please free to reach out and follow up. Thanks a lot, and wish you a good SMM 2022.
Thank you very much.